What do you view as what the next 10, 20 years holds in terms of the evolution of these technologies, and what do you think people around the world are going to do? Like, obviously, central bankers and governments are going to have some influence on what ends up happening, but they're not omnipotent. So can you just speak to what you see coming?
So I think there are three main paths. One would be central bank digital currencies, which is basically that governments want even more control and centralization of their ledgers. That's kind of path one. Path two is things like stablecoins, where this technology creates more global competition of money and assets, right? So, money is a marketable good, assets are marketable, but because there's 160 different currencies in the world, they kind of have like financial walls around them. They kind of purposely protect them from competition in a way. So, for example, if you're in Argentina and you're middle class, maybe it's hard for you to get dollars. Maybe it's hard for you to get shares of the S&P 500, whatever the case may be. You're unless you're wealthy, well-connected, it's kind of hard to go offshore. And even then, countries can just block you from leaving. So when we think of how money gets in or out of a country in the current system, there's really two main methods. One is bank wires, but those are controllable by the government. And the other one is ports of entry, which again are highly controlled by the government. Whereas what this technology does is it just pokes a million holes in those financial firewalls. And said, I could hire a Nigerian graphic designer, and she can send me a string of numbers, and that I can pay her, and it just goes around the Nigerian banking system. She can show me a QR code over a video call like we're having now, and I could pay her over the call, and it just goes around her system. Or you could memorize 12 words representing your private key for an asset, or either a stablecoin or a Bitcoin. And you could bring $1 billion through an airport just by writing that down or memorizing that or having that encrypted in the cloud somewhere or any number of methods. The value density is infinite. And so money can now get into and out of these borders a lot more readily, which has implications if you're a small and undesirable financial bubble. Basically, that your ways of keeping people and their value in there and constantly inflated, diluted, controlled is weaker now. And that, of course, the more people are aware of the technology, the better the technology gets. The global competition for money and assets, even the centralized variety like dollars or gold, you could, and this exists, you can make a gold-backed stablecoin based in Switzerland, and that can pierce into all these different countries too. Basically, you can have a hub in a stronger jurisdiction that pierces into weaker jurisdictions. As long as those stronger jurisdictions are fine with that. It doesn't matter if the weaker jurisdictions are fine with it or not. It's really just about where it's based and what assets it's holding. And then the third method is basically Bitcoin, which is the fully decentralized version, where even those stronger jurisdictions can't necessarily do much about it. China famously has, quote unquote, banned Bitcoin mining multiple times. It never really stuck. In 2021, they were more aggressive about banning Bitcoin. This one actually kind of stuck. And so, in a week's time, half of the Bitcoin network hash rate went offline. And if you looked at Amazon or Microsoft and said, okay, well, you have to move internationally your server system next week, you can imagine the uptime issues that they would have for months or probably a year as they figure out how to reassemble all those assets elsewhere. Whereas Bitcoin had 100% uptime. It just slowed down for a couple weeks until the automatic difficulty adjustment kicked in and reset the network back towards its normal speed. And so it was fully workable. And then just like a swarm, the miners just reassembled themselves elsewhere in other jurisdictions and actually became more decentralized because of that. And then ironically, something like 20% of the network reemerged in China. So China's still a mining jurisdiction. And if China has trouble banning something, that's usually a high signal thing to pay attention to. And so as I think some of these Western developed countries experience things like sovereign debt crises and things like that, Bitcoin is an asset that is, I think, worth understanding, both from a technical level and from an economics level. So there's really three paths ahead. There's central bank digital currencies, there's centralized global asset issuers like stablecoins, and then there's fully decentralized assets, which is mainly just Bitcoin.
And I guess in practice, do you think we're going to see kind of all three of those things being pushed by their various proponents?
I think so. I think we're already in an environment where all three exist. Nigeria's been an interesting case because they introduced the central bank digital currency. It had very low adoption. They cut off their banking system from crypto exchanges. So it was legal for Nigerians to own cryptocurrency, whether it's Bitcoin, stablecoins, whatever, but banks could not send money to exchanges. So they basically added frictions. They tried to use their financial firewalls. But nonetheless, firms like Chainalysis that kind of try to surveil this as much as possible, and they rank countries in terms of kind of crypto adoption. They found that Nigeria was near the top of the list. A very large percentage of Nigerians own non-zero amounts of Bitcoin, stable coins, things like that, way more than the central bank digital currency. And it just shows that just because the central bank currency exists doesn't mean it's going to be successful. People, as people choose money, they say, well, I want this outside money. I want something that's not controlled by Nigeria. And so I think that over time, we're going to, central bank digital currencies, I expect to ramp up. I think stable coins, as long as the US allows them, are likely going to continue being here and being a big thing for a while. And unless someone can find a way to break Bitcoin, centralize Bitcoin, hack Bitcoin, which has so far gotten, more and more solidified over time, then I think that's going to continue kind of taking market share and being kind of the baseline comparison. Every currency, I think, now has to be measured against Bitcoin, which is fully scarce, so zero terminal supply dilution, and globally portable. You can bring it anywhere by literally just memorizing 12 words if you want to, or writing it down or carving it in steel, whatever the case may be. You can self-custody these assets and bring them with you. And every currency has to deal with the fact that exists out in the wild.
Hey everybody, this is Bob Murphy. Thanks for listening to this clip from the InFi podcast. If you like what you heard and want to hear more, please consider subscribing and share this video with others. We've got new episodes dropping every Friday with more insightful discussions. Stay tuned.